Marcus Thompson threw himself into oncoming traffic, not because he wanted to die, but because a woman he'd never met was about to. He grabbed her, pulled her back between the parked cars, and felt the rush of a 2-ton SUV miss them both by inches. His hands were shaking. His heart was slamming against his ribs, and his phone was buzzing with a reminder. Interview in 8 minutes. The interview that would save his daughter's life. The interview he'd just destroyed. But here's what Marcus didn't know. The woman bleeding on the sidewalk beside him was the person sitting on the other side of that interview table. Before you keep watching, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. Marcus Thompson hadn't slept more than 4 hours in 3 days. Not because he couldn't, because every time he closed his eyes, the numbers started running. $387 left in checking. $1,200 rent due Friday. $640 outstanding from Zoe's ear infection last month. The one the urgent care said they'd send to collections if he didn't pay by the 15th. And the brakes on the Camry were grinding metal on metal now, the kind of sound that meant he was one hard stop away from a real problem. But today, none of that mattered. Today was the day the math changed. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 6:15 a.m., tying a tie he'd bought from Goodwill for $3. Navy blue, no stains, barely any wear. He'd practiced the knot 6 times the night before, watching a YouTube video with the volume low so he wouldn't wake Zoe. "Daddy?" He turned. She was standing in the doorway of their studio apartment, which meant she was standing about 4 feet from everything. The kitchen, the bed they shared, the fold-out table where she did her homework. "Hey, baby girl, why you up so early? You're wearing a tie." Zoe rubbed her eyes. "You never wear a tie. Special day today, remember? Daddy's got that interview. The one where you get a big office?" Marcus laughed. "I don't know about a big office, but maybe a desk, with a computer that doesn't freeze every 10 minutes. Zoe walked over and reached up, straightening his tie with the serious concentration of a 7-year-old performing surgery. "You look handsome, Daddy." "Yeah? Like a president." "Well, I'd settle for employed. Come on, let's get you dressed. Aunt Rita's picking you up in 40 minutes. He made her oatmeal, the instant kind, the only kind they could afford, and watched her eat while he reviewed his notes one more time. Meridian Consulting, Senior IT Systems Manager. Salary, $120,000. Benefits, health insurance, dental, vision. He'd read the job posting 11 times. He'd memorized the company's last 3 quarterly reports. He'd prepared answers for every possible question, technical and behavioral, and he'd practiced them in the mirror, in the shower, in the car, talking to himself like a man losing his mind. Because this wasn't just a job interview. This was the exit door from a life that was slowly crushing him. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Always." "If you get this job, do I get my own room?" Marcus put down his notes. "Who told you about that?" "Aunt Rita said if you get the big job, maybe we can move to a place with 2 bedrooms. Is that true?" He should have told Rita to keep her mouth shut. Because now, if he didn't get it, he'd have to explain to a 7-year-old why hoping for things was dangerous. "We'll see, baby. One step at a time." "But maybe?" He looked at her. Those big brown eyes. That gap-toothed smile that could break him faster than any bill collector ever could. "Yeah, maybe." Rita pulled up at 7:15 in her Honda, honking twice. Marcus carried Zoe down the stairs, buckled her into the back seat, and leaned in the window. "Wish me luck." Rita looked him over. "You look good, Marcus. Real good." "I feel like I'm about to throw up." "That means you care. Go get it." "If anything happens with Zoe—" "Marcus, go. She's fine. I've got her." He kissed Zoe through the window. "Be good for Aunt Rita." "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Don't be nervous. You're the smartest person I know." He almost lost it right there in the driveway. Almost. But he held it together, waved until the Honda turned the corner, and got into the Camry. The engine coughed twice before it started. The check engine light had been on so long, he'd stopped seeing it. He pulled out of the apartment complex and headed toward downtown, running through his talking points one more time. "Tell me about yourself." 8 years Army, including combat medic training. 5 years in IT at a tech startup. 3 years freelance after the divorce. Specializing in network architecture, systems integration, cybersecurity fundamentals. "Why did you leave your last position?" "My wife left. I had a 3-year-old and no childcare. The startup couldn't offer flexible hours. So I chose my daughter." He'd rehearsed that answer 20 times, trying to get the tone right. Not bitter, not pitiful, just honest. A man who made a hard choice and lived with it. "Why Meridian?" "Because you're the best in the field. Because your company culture emphasizes integrity. Because I've been surviving for 3 years and I'm ready to start building again." The traffic was bad, worse than he'd expected for a Tuesday morning. Some kind of construction on MLK Boulevard had everything backed up 6 blocks. Marcus checked the clock. 9:38. Interview at 10 o'clock. 12 minutes to get there, park, find the floor, check in. Tight, but doable. He cut through a side street he knew from his delivery days, back when he'd driven for DoorDash between freelance gigs, stuffing his pride into the trunk alongside cold bags of fast food because Zoe needed new shoes. 9:42. Getting closer. His phone buzzed. A text from Rita. "Zoe says to tell you good luck, and she loves you to the moon." He smiled. Typed back one-handed. "Tell her I love her to the moon and back." Twice. 9:45. 6 blocks out. He was going to make it. 9:47. That's when he saw it. The woman stepped off the curb wrong. Her heel caught the edge, one of those ridiculous thin heels that looked like weapons, and she went down hard. Not a stumble, a full collapse. Briefcase hit the pavement, papers exploded everywhere, and she landed half in the street, half between 2 parked cars. Marcus saw it happen in real time, the way he used to see things happen in Kandahar. Everything slowing down, every detail sharp. The woman on the ground, papers scattering into the lane, and the black SUV coming up the street at 35, maybe 40. The driver's head down, looking at a phone, not slowing, not seeing her. Marcus didn't make a decision. His body made it for him. 12 years of training, 4 in combat zones where hesitation meant death, took over before his conscious mind could even process what was happening. He slammed the Camry to the curb, threw it in park, left the engine running and the door open. He was in the street before his seatbelt finished retracting. 3 strides. 4. He grabbed the woman under both arms and hauled her backward between the parked cars just as the SUV blew past, so close he felt the displaced air on his face. The driver honked, not an apology, just a reflex, and kept going. Marcus's heart was hammering. His hands were shaking. The adrenaline dump was instant and total. The same feeling he'd had when an IED went off 20 meters from his Humvee in 2014. He was kneeling on concrete, holding a stranger, and his interview was in 11 minutes. "Are you okay? Ma'am? Can you hear me?" She was blonde, mid to late 30s, dressed in clothes that cost more than his monthly rent. Red blazer, now scuffed and torn at the elbow. Her face was tight with pain, eyes watering.
My ankle. Oh God, my papers.
Don't move. Let me look at it.
But my documents, they're everywhere.
Papers can be picked up. Let me see your ankle first. He was gentle but efficient. Hands that had treated shrapnel wounds and field amputations, now examining a swollen ankle on a downtown sidewalk. The training never left. You could take the medic out of the army, but you couldn't take the army out of the medic. Probably a bad sprain, not broken. You'd be screaming if it was broken. But you need ice and elevation. Can you call someone?
I have a meeting.
She was trying to stand. He held her down gently.
Please, I have a meeting in 15 minutes. It's critical. I can't miss it. Marcus glanced at his watch. 9:51. 9 minutes. His entire future, Zoe's future, was 9 minutes away from disappearing. He could leave, right now. She was alive. She was conscious. She could call 911 or an Uber or anyone else. He'd already saved her life. Nobody would blame him for going. Nobody except himself. Where's your meeting? Meridian Consulting, 3 blocks east. His stomach dropped. You said Meridian? Yes. Do you know it? He almost laughed. Almost. Because the universe had a sick sense of humor. Yeah, I know it. I'm headed there myself. She looked at him, confused. You work there? Not yet. He checked his watch again. 9:52. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to pick up your papers, help you to my car, and drive you to Meridian. Then I'm going to get you ice and somewhere to sit with that ankle elevated.
You don't have to do that.
Ma'am, you can't walk. And you said the meeting was critical.
It is. More than you know.
Then let me help. He moved fast, gathering papers from the street, from under cars, from the gutter. Some were crumpled, some had tire marks. He organized them as best he could, tapped them into a stack, and brought them back. I'm Marcus, by the way.
Vanessa.
She was still on the ground, clutching her ankle. Vanessa, I'm going to help you stand now. Put your weight on me, not on that ankle. She was lighter than he expected, or maybe he was stronger than he remembered. He got her to the Camry, eased her into the passenger seat, and elevated her foot on the dashboard.
Nice car,
she said. It wasn't. They both knew it wasn't. Gets me where I need to go, most of the time. He drove the 3 blocks at a pace that was somewhere between careful and desperate. Vanessa made calls, short, tense conversations about rescheduling and resequencing that made it clear she wasn't low on the corporate ladder. Can I ask what your meeting's about? Marcus said.
Strategy review. Her voice was clipped, guarded. It's been planned for weeks. A lot of people are counting on me to be there.
Well, you're going to be there, just with a limp. At Meridian's building, Marcus pulled up to the front entrance. He came around, helped Vanessa out, and walked her through the lobby. A tall black man in a Goodwill tie, half carrying a blonde woman in a torn red blazer. The security guard looked at them like he wasn't sure whether to help or call the police. She fell, Marcus said. Twisted her ankle. She works here. I'm fine, Vanessa said, which was obviously a lie. Marcus found ice at the lobby coffee bar, wrapped it in napkins, and helped Vanessa into a chair near the elevators. He elevated her ankle on her briefcase and positioned the ice pack. Keep that elevated for at least 20 minutes. If it swells more, go to urgent care. Don't walk on it if you can avoid it. You sound like a doctor. Combat medic. Close enough. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Not the quick glances of a woman in pain being helped by a stranger. A real look. Like she was seeing something she hadn't expected.
Thank you, Marcus. What you did back there, you could have been killed.
Nah, I've had closer calls.
Can I get your full name? I'd like to.
Marcus Thompson, and you don't owe me anything. Just take care of that ankle. He checked his watch. 10:03. 3 minutes late. And he still had to get to the 14th floor. I've got to go.
Go where?
But he was already moving toward the elevator, jabbing the button, watching the numbers crawl downward. Come on, come on, come on. The elevator opened. He stepped in, hit 14, and leaned against the wall as the doors closed. His reflection stared back at him. Tie slightly crooked, sweat on his forehead, hands still trembling from the adrenaline. You just saved someone's life, and it probably just cost you everything. 14th floor. He walked to the reception desk, trying to control his breathing. Marcus Thompson, I have a 10 o'clock interview with Miss Castellano. The receptionist, young, professional, sympathetic, looked at her screen. Mr. Thompson, your interview was scheduled for 10 o'clock. It's now 10:08. Miss Castellano has a very strict policy about punctuality. I understand. I had an emergency on the way here. Is there any possibility of rescheduling? I can ask, but... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Marcus sat in the waiting area. The chair was leather, the kind of leather he'd never be able to afford. The lobby smelled like money and fresh coffee and someone else's success. He thought about Zoe.
If you get this job, do I get my own room?
He thought about the oatmeal she'd eaten that morning. Instant. The cheap kind. The only kind. He thought about Rita's face when she'd said, "Go get it." Like she believed in him, even when he'd stopped believing in himself. He thought about the woman downstairs, Vanessa, sitting in the lobby chair with ice on her ankle because he'd made a choice. The right choice. The choice that had just cost his daughter her bedroom. His phone buzzed. Rita again. How'd it go? He started to type, I blew it, but deleted it. Typed, still waiting instead. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Marcus was already planning what to tell Zoe. Something about how sometimes things don't work out, but that doesn't mean you stop trying. Something about how Daddy would find another opportunity. Something that wasn't a lie, but wasn't the whole truth either. The receptionist's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression changed. Mr. Thompson? He stood.
Yes? Miss Castellano will see you now. Conference room C, down the hall to the left.
Marcus blinked.
She will?
Apparently. The receptionist looked as confused as he was. She specifically asked for you. He walked down the hallway, straightening his goodwill tie, wiping his palms on his pants. Conference room C was glass-walled, the kind of room where important decisions were made by important people. 3 people sat inside. A stern-looking man in his 50s, with silver hair and a face that had never apologized for anything. A younger woman with a tablet, already taking notes before the meeting had started. And at the head of the table, ankle elevated on a stack of folders, ice pack resting on the swelling, red blazer torn at the elbow. Vanessa. She smiled when he walked in. Not a polite smile, not a corporate smile. A real one. Mr. Thompson, she said, thank you for joining us. I'm Vanessa Castellano, CEO of Meridian Consulting. Marcus stopped in the doorway.
I believe we've already met. The room was quiet. The man with the silver hair was watching. The woman with the tablet was watching. Vanessa was watching. Everyone was watching Marcus Thompson stand in the doorway of the most important room he'd ever entered, realizing that the woman whose life he'd just saved was the woman who held his future in her hands. You're the CEO, he said. I am. I didn't know. I know you didn't.
Vanessa gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Please, sit down." Marcus sat. His hands were steady now. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by something else. A calm he recognized from the field. The calm that came when the situation was completely out of your control, and the only thing left to do was tell the truth. "I'd like to start," Vanessa said, "by asking you a simple question. Why were you late to what I assume you knew was the most important interview of your career?" Marcus looked at her, at the ice on her ankle, at the torn blazer,
At the woman he'd pulled out of a street 8 minutes ago. "I saw someone fall," he said. "She was hurt. She was in danger. I stopped to help."
"Even though it made you late?"
"Yes."
"Why?"
He didn't hesitate. "Because she needed help. Because someone on their phone almost killed her. Because I'm a father, and I'd want someone to stop for my daughter. Because some things matter more than being on time."
The silver-haired man leaned back in his chair. The woman with the tablet stopped typing. Vanessa Castellano, CEO of Meridian Consulting, looked at Marcus Thompson, single father, freelance IT technician, former combat medic, the man who had thrown himself into traffic to save her life and destroyed his own opportunity in the process. And she said, "Tell me everything." So he told her everything. Not the rehearsed version, not the polished, mirror-practiced YouTube tutorial version he'd been running through in the Camry for the last hour. The real version. The one that started in a place most people in glass conference rooms had never heard of. 8 years in the Army, Marcus said. 4 of those in combat zones, Afghanistan mostly. I was a medic. 68 whiskey, if that means anything to you. It doesn't, the silver-haired man said. His name was Richard Gaines, Senior VP of Operations. He hadn't smiled yet. Marcus wasn't sure the man's face was built for it. It means I was the person who kept people alive when everything around them was trying to kill them. I've treated gunshot wounds in the back of a moving Humvee. I've performed field triage on 6 soldiers at once, with supplies meant for 2. I've made decisions in 3 seconds that determined whether someone lived or died. He paused, not for drama, because the memories still hit different when he said them out loud. When I got out, I went into IT. Sounds like a weird jump, but it's not. Systems architecture is triage. You assess the problem, prioritize the threats, allocate resources, and you fix what's broken before it takes down everything else. I'm good at it because I've been doing it my whole life, just in different uniforms. Vanessa was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. The younger woman, her name was Claire, he'd learn later, was typing steadily on her tablet. Your resume says you were at a tech startup for 5 years, Richard said, flipping through papers. Left 3 years ago. Why? My wife left. The room shifted. Not visibly, but Marcus felt it. The way the air changes when someone says something that doesn't belong in a corporate interview. She walked out when Zoe was 3. No warning, no discussion, no forwarding address for 6 months. One day I came home from work and the apartment was half empty. She took the furniture. She took the savings. She left the kid. I'm sorry, Claire said quietly. Don't be. Zoe's the best thing that ever happened to me. But a 3-year-old doesn't care about your work schedule. She needs to be picked up from daycare at 5:30, not 7 o'clock. She needs dinner and bath time and someone to read Goodnight Moon 14 times in a row, because that's the only book that stops the nightmares about why mommy isn't coming home. Marcus kept his voice steady. He'd told this story before, to himself mostly, in the dark, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I asked the startup for flexible hours. They said no. I asked for remote days. They said no. I asked for anything, a later start, an earlier finish, the ability to leave for 30 minutes to pick up my daughter and come back. They said it wasn't compatible with the company culture. So you left, Vanessa said. I chose my daughter. Every time. I will always choose my daughter. Richard cleared his throat. Noble sentiment, but this is a senior management position. There will be demands on your time. Late nights, weekend emergencies. System failures don't wait for convenient hours. With all due respect, Mr. Gaines, neither do IEDs. I managed critical systems in a war zone where the consequences of failure weren't lost revenue. They were lost lives. I can handle your server going down at 2 a.m. The difference is, now I need to know I can call my sister to come stay with Zoe while I do it. Richard's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes moved, a flicker of something that might have been respect. Let's talk technical, Vanessa said. Walk us through your approach to migrating a legacy system to cloud architecture. Assume a mid-sized company with 500 employees, multiple legacy databases, and zero documentation. This was where Marcus felt the ground get solid under his feet. This was what he knew, what he was built for. First thing I do is audit. You can't fix what you don't understand. I'd spend 2 weeks mapping every system, every database, every integration point. I talked to the people who actually use these systems, not the managers, the workers. The person in accounting who's been using the same spreadsheet since 2009 because nobody ever showed her the new system. The warehouse guy who built his own access database because the official one doesn't track what he needs. Why the workers first? Claire asked. Because management tells you what they think the systems do. Workers tell you what the systems actually do. There's always a gap, and that gap is where migrations fail. He spent 15 minutes walking through his methodology. Cloud assessment, data migration strategy, parallel running periods, rollback protocols, security frameworks, compliance checkpoints. He drew diagrams on the whiteboard without being asked, his handwriting sharp and clear, his thinking structured in a way that came from years of solving problems, with a margin for error was zero. Richard asked about cybersecurity protocols. Marcus answered with specific examples from his freelance work. A small law firm whose entire client database had been exposed because of a default password nobody had changed in 4 years. A medical practice that was one phishing email away from a HIPAA violation. A nonprofit that had been running their donor database on a server that hadn't been updated since the Obama administration. I fixed all of them, Marcus said. Not because they were paying top dollar. Most of them couldn't afford me at market rate. I charged what they could pay because the work needed to be done, and I was the person who could do it. That's not a great business model, Richard observed. No, sir, it's not. That's why I'm sitting in this chair. For the first time, Richard Gaines almost smiled. They went on for another 20 minutes. Crisis management scenarios, team leadership philosophy, budget allocation under constraints. Every question Marcus answered not with theory, but with experience. Real situations, real solutions, real outcomes. Then Vanessa leaned forward, and the room got quiet in a way that told Marcus this was the question that mattered. One last thing, Mr. Thompson. I want to go back to this morning. Okay? You knew this interview was critical. You told me yourself. Stability, benefits, your daughter. Everything was riding on being in this room at 10 o'clock. Yes. But you stopped. You pulled over, you got out of your car, you ran into traffic, and you saved a stranger's life. And then, instead of leaving once the immediate danger was past, you gathered her papers, drove her to her meeting, found her ice, and made sure she was comfortable. All while your clock was running out. Marcus didn't say anything. He knew she wasn't finished. Do you regret that choice? He'd known this question was coming from the moment he saw her sitting at the head of the table. He'd had exactly 3 minutes in the hallway to prepare for it, and he'd spent those 3 minutes not preparing at all, just thinking about Zoe. No. even though it could have cost you this job? Even then. Why? Because my daughter is 7 years old, and she's watching everything I do. Every choice I make, she's filing it away, building her understanding of what kind of man her father is, what kind of person she should be. If I drove past a woman lying in the street because I had somewhere important to be, if I chose my own opportunity over someone else's life, what am I teaching her? He stopped, took a breath. I want Zoe to have her own bedroom. I want to pay off her medical bills. I want to fix the brakes on my car and buy her real oatmeal instead of the instant stuff she pretends to like because she knows it's all we can afford. I want all of that so badly I can taste it, but not at the cost of becoming someone I wouldn't want her to grow up to be. The conference room was silent. Claire had stopped typing. Richard was looking at him with an expression Marcus hadn't seen before. Not the corporate evaluator, but the man underneath. I'd rather struggle and be someone Zoe's proud of than succeed and be someone she learns to make excuses for. Vanessa held his gaze for a long moment. Then she turned to Richard. Do you need more time? Richard shook his head slowly. I've heard enough. Claire? Same. Vanessa turned back to Marcus. Her voice was different now, still professional, but warmer, like a door had opened somewhere. Mr. Thompson, we'd like to offer you the position. Senior IT Systems Manager. Starting salary of $120,000. Full benefits, including health, dental, and vision. And flexible scheduling to accommodate your responsibilities as a parent. Marcus heard the words. He understood the words, but his body didn't believe them. He sat there, hands on the table, waiting for the catch. I'm sorry, you're offering me the job? I am. Even though I was late. You were late because you threw yourself in front of a car to save my life, and then you took care of me when you had every reason to leave. That tells me more about who you are than anything on your resume. Vanessa adjusted the ice on her ankle. I've been running this company for 12 years, Mr. Thompson. I've hired hundreds of people. I've learned that skills can be taught, systems can be learned, but character is what you walk in the door with. And you just showed me more character in one morning than most people show in a career. Marcus felt something breaking loose inside his chest. Not sadness, not relief exactly, something bigger. The feeling of a weight he'd been carrying for so long he'd forgotten it was there, suddenly shifting. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you can start in 2 weeks. Say you'll bring the same integrity to this role that you showed me on that sidewalk. Yes. His voice cracked on the word, and he didn't care. Absolutely yes. Vanessa smiled. Good. Claire will walk you through the initial paperwork. We'll send the formal offer letter by end of day tomorrow. Marcus shook hands with Richard, who gripped hard and held on an extra beat. Welcome aboard, Thompson. And for what it's worth, I spent 20 years in the Marines. I know what 68 whiskey means. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Just be as good as you look on paper. I'll be better. Claire handed him a folder of documents and walked him through start dates, onboarding procedures, direct deposit forms. Marcus filled out paperwork on autopilot, his handwriting steady, even though his insides were shaking. He signed his name 11 times, and each time it felt like signing a new lease on life. When it was done, Claire shook his hand and left. Richard followed. And then it was just Marcus and Vanessa in the glass conference room. The city skyline stretched out behind her like a promise. Can I be honest with you? Marcus said. I prefer it. When I was sitting in that waiting area, I was trying to figure out what to tell my daughter. How to explain that Daddy didn't get the job because he stopped to help someone. How to make her understand that doing the right thing doesn't always come with a reward.
And now?
Now, I don't know what to tell her either, but for a very different reason. Vanessa laughed. It was the kind of laugh that had nothing corporate in it. Just a woman who'd had a terrible morning that was turning into something unexpected. Tell her the truth.
Tell her that her father's integrity spoke louder than his punctuality.
She's 7. She'll ask if she gets her own bedroom.
Does she?
Yeah.
Marcus's voice broke again.
Yeah, she does.
He stood up, gathered his folder, started for the door.
Marcus. He turned. In the elevator, when you were helping me, I asked what your meeting was about, and you said you were headed to Meridian. You said, "Not yet," when I asked if you worked here. You knew, didn't you? You knew that helping me was going to make you late for the same company.
Yes.
And you did it anyway.
Ma'am, Vanessa, if you were lying in the street and my interview was at the White House, I'd still have pulled over. The address doesn't change the math.
She looked at him for a long time. Go home, Marcus. Hug your daughter. I'll see you in 2 weeks. He walked to the elevator alone, pressed the button, watched the numbers climb. When the doors opened and he stepped inside, he caught his reflection again. Same Goodwill tie, same sweat-dampened forehead, same man who'd driven here this morning with $387 in his bank account and a prayer. But different. The elevator doors closed, and Marcus Thompson did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He cried. Not the quiet kind, not the dignified single tear rolling down the cheek kind they showed in movies. The ugly kind. The kind that comes from a place so deep you forgot it existed. His back against the elevator wall, folder clutched to his chest, sobbing like the world had finally decided to stop hitting him. 3 years. 3 years of holding it together. Of being strong for Zoe. Of making ends meet with rubber bands and willpower. Of lying awake at 3 a.m. doing math that never worked. Of smiling at his daughter across a table of instant oatmeal and pretending everything was fine. 3 years of being terrified every single day that he wasn't enough.
The elevator reached the lobby. Marcus wiped his face with his sleeve, took 3 deep breaths, and walked out like nothing had happened. The security guard nodded at him. The woman at the coffee bar smiled. Nobody knew that the tall black man in the navy tie had just had his life changed in a glass room on the 14th floor. He got to the Camry, sat in the driver's seat, pulled out his phone. He called Rita. She answered on the first ring.
Well, how'd it go? Did you get it?
I got it. Silence. Then,
Marcus David Thompson, don't you play with me.
I'm not playing. I got the job. $120,000. Benefits. Health insurance. Dental. Rita screamed. Not a polite scream. The kind of scream that made him pull the phone away from his ear and laugh for the first time in what felt like months.
Oh my God, Marcus. Oh my God. I'm going to cry. I'm crying. Zoe, Zoe, baby, come here. Your daddy.
Don't tell her yet. Let me. I want to see her face. Boy, you better get over here right now. I'm coming. Rita? Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For watching Zoe. For believing in me. For all of it. You don't need to thank me, Marcus. You just needed someone to remind you that you were worth believing in. Now get your behind over here and tell this child she's getting her own room before I do it myself. He hung up, started the Camry. It coughed twice, same as always, but today even the cough sounded different. Like even the car knew something had changed. He drove to Rita's house with the windows down, the February air cold on his face, feeling every mile of the distance between who he'd been this morning and who he was now. The same man, exactly the same, but standing in a different place. Rita's house was a small 2-bedroom in East Oakland, the kind of house that held more love than square footage. He parked behind the Honda and sat for a moment, collecting himself. He didn't want Zoe to see that he'd been crying.
She worried about him enough already, more than any 7-year-old should have to worry about anything. He walked up the driveway, and the front door flew open before he reached the porch. "Daddy!" Zoe launched herself off the top step. He caught her the way he always did, effortlessly, instinctively, like his arms had been built specifically for this purpose. "Hey, baby girl." "Aunt Rita's being weird. She keeps looking at me and crying."
Aunt Rita's always weird. That's why we love her.
"Did you have your meeting?"
I did.
"Did you do good?"
Marcus carried her inside, sat down on Rita's couch, the one with the spring that poked you if you sat too far left, and put Zoe on his lap. I did good, baby. I did real good.
"Did you get the job?"
He looked at her. Those eyes, that gap-toothed smile, the face that had kept him alive for 3 years when nothing else could. Yeah, Zoe. Daddy got the job. She stared at him, processing. Then her eyes went wide.
The big job? The one with the desk and the computer?
The big job, with a desk and a computer, and something else. What? You're getting your own bedroom. Zoe's mouth opened, closed, opened again, and then she grabbed his face with both hands, small fingers on his cheeks, the way she did when she wanted to make sure he was really paying attention.
"My own room? Like, just for me? With a door?"
With a door, and a window, and you can pick the color for the walls.
"Any color?"
Any color in the world.
"Purple."
Then purple it is. She hugged him so hard he couldn't breathe, and he let her, because there was no air in the world he needed more than he needed this moment. Rita was standing in the kitchen doorway, tears streaming down her face, mouthing, "I'm so proud of you," over Zoe's shoulder. Marcus held his daughter and thought about the woman in the red blazer, about the SUV that almost killed her,
About the 8 minutes that had almost cost him everything and ended up giving him more than he dared to imagine.
He thought about what he'd said in that conference room, that he wanted Zoe to grow up knowing that doing right matters more than getting ahead. He'd meant every word. And today, for the first time in a long time, the universe had agreed. Zoe pulled back and looked at him seriously.
"Daddy, you smell like outside."
"I've had a big morning."
"Were you scared?"
He thought about it, really thought about it, about the SUV, about the sidewalk, about sitting in that lobby at 10:08, certain he'd lost everything, about hearing Vanessa's voice and seeing her face, and understanding that nothing was what he thought it was. "Yeah, baby, I was scared."
"But you did it anyway?"
"I did it anyway."
"That's brave, Daddy."
"You know what, Zoe? I think you might be right."
She put her head on his chest, and he held her there.
In Rita's living room, with the broken spring in the couch and the February light coming through windows that needed cleaning. And he let himself believe, for the first time in 3 years, that maybe things were going to be okay. Not perfect, not easy, but okay. And for Marcus Thompson, on this particular Tuesday morning, okay felt like a miracle. 2 weeks went by faster than Marcus expected. He spent the first week tying up loose ends with his freelance clients, the law firm, the medical practice, the nonprofit with the ancient server. He called each one personally, explained he was moving on, and helped them find replacement support. He could have just sent emails. Nobody would have blamed him. But these were people who'd trusted him when he was nobody, and Marcus didn't leave people hanging. The second week was all about the apartment.
He and Rita spent 3 days searching listings online, calling landlords, visiting places that ranged from barely acceptable to absolutely not. On Thursday, they found it. A 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, 15 minutes from Zoe's school, 20 minutes from Meridian's office. The rent was $1,800 a month, which would have been laughable 2 weeks ago, and was now simply manageable. "You sure about this one?" Rita asked, standing in the empty living room. "Kitchen's got a window, Zoe's room gets morning light, and there's a park 2 blocks over." "I meant, can you afford it?" "Starting salary covers it with room to breathe. First time I've been able to say that in 3 years." Rita hugged him right there in the empty apartment, and he let her, because Rita had earned every hug he'd ever give for the rest of his life. He told Zoe about the apartment on Friday night over dinner. Real dinner. Not instant oatmeal, but chicken and rice and green beans because he could afford groceries now. Actual groceries from an actual store instead of the discount shelf at the gas station. "It has 2 bathrooms?" Zoe's eyes were the size of dinner plates. "Well, 1.5. The little one doesn't have a bathtub." "That's still basically 2. "Basically 2, yeah." "When do we move?" "This weekend. Aunt Rita's helping." "Can I paint my room purple this weekend too?" "Let's get the furniture in first, baby." "But soon?" "Soon. I promise." She went back to her chicken with the satisfied look of a person whose entire worldview had just been validated. Marcus watched her eat and felt something he hadn't felt in so long he almost didn't recognize it. Peace. Not happiness. Happiness was loud and temporary. This was quieter. Deeper. The feeling of ground that wasn't shifting under his feet for the first time in years. They moved on Saturday. Marcus didn't own much. A bed, a fold-out table, Zoe's clothes, his clothes, a box of kitchen stuff, and 4 boxes of books that he refused to get rid of, no matter how many times Rita told him they had libraries for a reason. The whole move took 3 hours in a rented U-Haul, and by Saturday night, Zoe was sleeping in her own room for the first time in her life. Marcus stood in her doorway and watched her sleep. She'd insisted on leaving the door open. "Just a little bit, Daddy, so I can see the hallway light." Because she was brave, but she was still 7. Her stuffed elephant was tucked under one arm, and she'd already taped a piece of construction paper to the wall that said, "Zoe's room," in purple crayon. He stood there for a long time, not thinking about anything, just standing there. Monday morning, Marcus Thompson put on a new tie. Not Goodwill this time, but not expensive either, just clean and professional, and drove to Meridian Consulting to start the rest of his life. The first day was orientation. HR paperwork, security badge, company handbook, benefits enrollment. Marcus spent 20 minutes staring at the health insurance options. Not because he couldn't decide, but because he'd spent 3 years without any insurance at all. And the simple act of checking a box that said employee plus dependent made his throat tight. He chose the PPO plan. It covered everything. Zoe's ear infections, her dental checkups, her annual physical. All of it. No more emergency room visits at 2 a.m. because urgent care was closed and he couldn't afford to wait until morning. No more choosing between antibiotics and groceries. He checked the box and moved on before anyone noticed his eyes were wet. His office was on the 12th floor. Not a corner office, he hadn't expected one, but a real office with a door and a desk and a computer that didn't freeze every 10 minutes, just like he'd told Zoe. His nameplate was already on the door. Marcus Thompson, Senior IT Systems Manager. He touched it, just once, just to make sure it was real. His team was 12 people, 11 technically. The 12th position had been recently added to the budget,
and Marcus would be hiring for it next month. They ranged from a 23-year-old fresh out of college named Devin to a 58-year-old database administrator named Patricia, who'd been at Meridian since the beginning, and who looked at Marcus the way a veteran looks at a new commanding officer, respectful but reserving judgment. "So you're the new boss," Patricia said on his first morning, standing in his doorway with a coffee mug that said, "I survived Y2K. I'm the new guy. Whether I get to be the boss depends on whether you let me." Patricia almost smiled.
Vanessa hired you personally. That doesn't happen often. So I've been told. Last 3 IT managers came through the usual process. Recruiters, multiple rounds, panel interviews, the whole dog and pony show. You had 1 meeting and got the job. People are curious about that.
I imagine they are.
You going to tell me the story?
You going to trust me either way?
Patricia looked at him for a long moment. Then she did smile, small but real. Ask me again in a month.
Fair enough.
The first week was assessment. Marcus did exactly what he described in his interview. He talked to everyone. Not just his team. Everyone. The accounting department, the sales floor, the warehouse, the executive assistants. He carried a notebook and asked the same 3 questions everywhere he went. What systems do you use? What works? What doesn't? The answers were revealing. Meridian's technology infrastructure was functional, but fragile. Systems that should have been integrated were running in parallel. Data that should have been centralized was scattered across 17 different platforms. The network security was adequate, but outdated. Good enough to stop casual threats, not sophisticated enough to handle anything serious. "It's a mess," Devin told him on Wednesday, pulling up a network map that looked like a plate of spaghetti. "I've been here 8 months, and I still find systems nobody told me about. Last week, I discovered an entire customer database running on a server in the basement that hasn't been updated since 2019. "Who set it up?" "Guy who was here before me. He left, and nobody knew the server existed. I only found it because the cooling unit started making a noise." "Is the data backed up?" Devin's expression answered the question. "Okay," Marcus said. "First priority. Let's map everything. Every server, every database, every shadow system somebody built in Excel because the official tools didn't work for them. I want a complete picture by end of next week. That's ambitious. That's necessary. You can't protect what you can't see." He worked late that night, the first of many. Not because the company demanded it, but because the work needed doing. And Marcus had never been the kind of person who left a problem for tomorrow when he could start solving it today. He called Rita at 7 o'clock and asked her to put Zoe to bed. "You working late already? It's your first week." "I know. It won't be every night." "Uh-huh. That's what you said about freelancing." "This is different. This is building something. I'll be home by 9. "Zoe wants to talk to you." There was a rustling sound, then, "Daddy, Aunt Rita made me eat broccoli." "Broccoli's good for you." "It's disgusting, and I'm being very brave about it." "I appreciate your bravery. Did you do your homework?" "Yes, and I drew a picture of our new apartment. I put it on the fridge." "I can't wait to see it. I'll be home soon, okay?" "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Is your office nice?" "It's real nice, baby. It's got my name on the door." "Like a sign?" "Like a sign." "That's so cool. Okay, good night. I love you to the moon." "Love you to the moon and back. Twice." He hung up and stared at his computer screen for a minute. The network map Devin had pulled up was still there. All those tangled lines and orphaned systems and vulnerabilities waiting to be exploited. A mess. A beautiful, fixable mess. Marcus cracked his knuckles and got to work. By the end of his second week, he'd completed the full audit.
The results were worse than he'd expected, and better than he'd feared. The core infrastructure was solid. Whoever had built it originally knew what they were doing. But years of patchwork fixes and deferred maintenance had created layers of technical debt that were costing the company money and exposing it to risk. He wrote a 30-page report. Then he deleted it and wrote a 5-page summary instead, because he'd learned in the Army that the people who needed to make decisions didn't have time for 30 pages. He presented it to Vanessa on a Friday afternoon. She was behind her desk, ankle still in a brace. It had been a worse sprain than Marcus originally thought, requiring physical therapy twice a week. "Give me the headlines," she said. "Your infrastructure works, but it's held together with duct tape and good intentions. I've identified 6 critical vulnerabilities that need immediate attention, 12 systems that should be consolidated, and a network architecture that's about 5 years behind where it should be. Cost to fix? To do it right? About $340,000 over 18 months. But the ROI is significant. I estimate $200,000 in annual savings from efficiency gains alone, plus reduced risk exposure. You've been here 2 weeks. I work fast when the problems are clear." Vanessa flipped through his summary. Marcus watched her read. She was thorough, pausing on specific points, making small notes in the margins. This was not a CEO who delegated understanding. "This is good work, Marcus. Really good." "Thank you. I want you to present this to the full leadership team next Thursday." "I'll be ready." She put down the report and looked at him. "How are you settling in? And I mean really, not the HR answer." "Really? It's the best job I've ever had. The team's strong, the work's meaningful, and for the first time in 3 years, I'm not checking my bank account every morning to see if I can afford coffee." "And Zoe?" "She's got her own room, painted purple last weekend. She told her entire class about it on Monday. Her teacher sent me a note saying Zoe gave a 5-minute presentation about how purple is scientifically the best color." Vanessa laughed. "She sounds incredible. She's the best person I know. And she's 7, so that's saying something about the rest of us." There was a pause. The kind that happens when 2 people are hovering near a conversation that's bigger than the one they're having. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Of course. That morning, when I helped you, you said you had a critical meeting, a strategy review, but you never told me what it was about." Vanessa's expression changed. Not closed off, but careful, measured. "I wasn't ready to talk about that yet." "That's fair. I shouldn't have asked." "No, it's a fair question, and I will tell you. Just not today. There are some things I need to sort through first." Marcus nodded and left it there. He'd learned in the Army that you don't push people toward conversations they're not ready for. The truth comes out on its own schedule. 4 more weeks passed. Marcus settled into a rhythm that felt like breathing. The first time work had felt that way since before the divorce. He arrived at 8 o'clock, handled the morning briefing with his team at 8:30, and spent his days solving problems that were complex enough to challenge him and important enough to matter. He hired for the 12th position, a young woman named Keisha who'd been working help desk at a hospital and had the kind of raw talent that reminded Marcus of himself at that age. Hungry, smart, underestimated. "Why do you want to leave the hospital?" he'd asked in her interview. "Because I'm answering password reset tickets 40 hours a week, and I can build you a security infrastructure from scratch. I just need someone to elect me." "How do I know you can do what you say?" "Give me a week. If I can't prove it, I'll walk out on my own." He hired her. She proved it in 3 days. Patricia came around too. It took almost exactly a month, just as she'd predicted. She showed up at Marcus's office one afternoon with 2 coffees and sat down without being invited. "You're not bad," she said, handing him a cup. "High praise from you, Patricia."
Don't let it go to your head. I'm saying you're competent and you treat people right. That's the minimum in my book.
What's the maximum?
The maximum is you stick around long enough for me to retire, knowing this team's in good hands. I've watched 3 IT managers come and go in 6 years. 2 of them didn't know what they were doing. The third one knew, but didn't care.
And me?
You know and you care. That's rare. She sipped her coffee. Also, you brought donuts on your 3rd day. That bought you a lot of goodwill.
Strategic donut deployment. I learned it in the Army.
Sure you did. It was around the 5th week that Marcus began to notice something unusual about Meridian. Not the work. The work was straightforward. It was the culture. The way people treated each other. The way decisions were made. He noticed it first during a product launch. The sales team had been pushing hard for 3 months to roll out a new consulting package, and the launch date was set for a Tuesday. On Monday afternoon, Marcus was in his office when he heard a commotion down the hall. One of the senior sales directors, a man named Tom Brennan, had just gotten a phone call. His wife had been in a car accident. She was alive, but in surgery. Marcus expected what he'd seen at every other company he'd worked for. Sympathy followed by a quiet reshuffling to make sure the launch stayed on track. Someone would cover Tom's responsibilities. Someone would send flowers. Business would continue. Instead, Vanessa walked out of her office, called an all-hands meeting, and said 6 words. "We're pushing the launch 1 week." The room went silent. "Tom Brennan is one of ours," she said. "His wife is in surgery. His team needs to be with him, not worrying about a launch date. We push 1 week, no discussion." Richard Gaines, who was in the room, didn't argue. Nobody argued. They just nodded and started making calls. Marcus watched it happen and felt something click into place. This wasn't corporate performance. This wasn't a CEO doing something nice for the optics. This was a company that actually meant it. He saw it again 3 weeks later. Quarterly numbers came in tight. Not bad, but below projections. Marcus was in a leadership meeting when the CFO, a sharp-eyed woman named Sandra Liu, laid out the options. "We can meet our margin target by reducing headcount. 4 positions in operations, 2 in marketing. Estimated savings of $480,000 annually." Marcus watched the faces around the table. He'd been in rooms like this before. At the startup, headcount reductions were presented as mathematical certainties. Unfortunate, but inevitable, like weather. Vanessa listened to Sandra's full presentation. Then she turned to the leadership team. "Other options?" Richard spoke first. "We could defer the office renovation. That's $200,000 we haven't committed yet." "The executive retreat," Claire added. "Cancel it. That's another $85,000. "Leadership team takes a 10% salary reduction for 2 quarters, Vanessa said, "including me. That gets us to $350,000. Sandra looked up from her spreadsheet. "That still leaves a gap." "Then we find the rest in operational efficiencies. Marcus, your infrastructure consolidation plan. You said it would generate $200,000 in annual savings?" "Yes, but the full savings won't materialize for 12 to 18 months. "Can you accelerate any of it?" Marcus thought. "If I prioritize the server consolidation and the redundant licensing cleanup, I can deliver about $90,000 in savings within the quarter. Maybe more." "That closes the gap," Sandra said, running the numbers. "Barely." "Barely is enough," Vanessa said. "Nobody gets fired. We tighten our belts. We accelerate efficiencies. And we come back stronger next quarter." 6 people kept their jobs that afternoon because a CEO chose to cut her own salary instead. Marcus sat in that meeting and thought about every company he'd ever worked for.
every boss who talked about family in team meetings, and then signed layoff lists without hesitation. This was different. Vanessa Castellano wasn't just talking, she was paying for it. He wanted to tell her what he'd seen, what it meant to watch a leader actually lead instead of just managing downward. But the right moment didn't come. Not that week, not the next. Vanessa was busy with board meetings and client presentations and physical therapy for her ankle. And Marcus was deep in the server consolidation project, working to deliver those savings he'd promised. Then, 6 months to the day after his first morning at Meridian, Vanessa's assistant called his office. "Miss Castellano would like to see you. Can you come up now?" "Is everything okay?" "She didn't say. She just said it was important." Marcus took the elevator to the executive floor, straightening his tie, a reflex now, not a performance. Vanessa's office was at the end of the hall, glass-walled like the conference room where he'd been interviewed, with a view of the city that reminded him daily how far he'd come from that studio apartment. She was standing when he walked in. The ankle brace was gone, had been for 2 months, but she still favored the other leg slightly, a permanent reminder.
"Close the door, please."
He did. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. He sat.
"I need to tell you something, Marcus. Something I should have told you a long time ago."
"Okay."
"That morning. The morning you pulled me out of the street."
I told you I had a critical meeting, a strategy review. I remember. I wasn't going to a strategy review. Vanessa sat down across from him. She folded her hands on the desk. I was going to a board meeting, and the proposal I was carrying, the papers you picked up off the street, was a plan to outsource Meridian's entire IT department. Marcus didn't move. Every person on your team, Patricia, Devon, Keisha, well, Keisha's position, the one that hadn't been filled yet. 12 jobs total, sent to an outside contractor to save the company $1.2 million annually. You were going to eliminate my department. I was going to eliminate the department that your position now exists in, yes. The job you interviewed for wouldn't have existed by end of quarter if I've gone through with it. Marcus sat with that, let it settle. He could feel the weight of it. Not anger, not betrayal, but something more complex. Something that needed space. What changed your mind? Vanessa looked at him, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked vulnerable. Not weak, not uncertain, but open in a way she hadn't been before.
"You did."
"I don't understand."
"I was walking to that board meeting with a sprained ankle and a plan I'd spent 3 months developing. The numbers were clean. The logic was sound. The board was expecting it. And then I sat in that lobby chair with ice on my ankle, and I looked at the papers you'd gathered off the street. Some of them had tire marks on them. Did you know that? And I thought about what had just happened." She paused. "A man I'd never met threw himself into traffic to save my life. Then he picked up my papers, drove me to my meeting, found me ice, and made sure I was comfortable. And when I asked his name so I could repay him, he said I didn't owe him anything. Then he left to go to his own meeting, which he was now late for because of me. I was just, let me finish."
I sat there thinking about that. About a stranger who had every reason to keep driving and didn't. Who sacrificed his own opportunity. An opportunity I later learned was life-changing for him and his daughter. To help someone he'd never see again. And then I looked down at the proposal in my lap. The one that would fire 12 people to save money. 12 people with families. 12 people who, for all I knew, were exactly like you. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I walked into that board meeting 30 minutes late, with a torn blazer and a limp
and a completely different proposal than anyone was expecting. I told them we weren't outsourcing. I told them we'd find another way. How did they react? Richard backed me. He always does when it matters. Sandra was skeptical but willing to model alternatives. 2 board members were furious.
One of them, Gerald Whitfield, old school, bottom line only type, stood up and said, "Vanessa, what could possibly have changed in the 30 minutes between leaving your house and arriving at this table?"
What did you tell him?
I told him that I'd been reminded what actually makes a company valuable. That I'd rather have a team of people who stop for strangers than save money with contractors who don't. That Meridian exists to prove that integrity and profitability aren't opposites. And the moment we start firing good people to pad margins is the moment we become every other company I built this one to be different from.
And Gerald?
Gerald voted against me. He's still on the board. He still thinks I made a mistake. Every quarter, he looks at the IT budget and shakes his head.
Vanessa smiled. And every quarter, your department's performance makes it harder for him to argue. Marcus leaned back in his chair. The information was rearranging everything he thought he knew about the last 6 months. Every moment, his hiring, his team, the company's culture decisions he'd witnessed. All of it was connected to that morning on the sidewalk in ways he'd never imagined. Patricia, he said. Devon. Keisha. They don't know. No. They don't know they almost lost their jobs. No. And I'd prefer to keep it that way. They don't need to carry that. What they need is to keep doing exactly what they've been doing under your leadership, which, for the record, has exceeded every performance metric we set. Marcus was quiet for a long time, long enough that Vanessa started to look concerned. "Are you angry?" she asked. "No." "You have every right to be. I should have told you sooner." "I'm not angry, Vanessa. I'm trying to understand something." "What?" "That morning, when I pulled over, I thought I was giving something up. I thought I was sacrificing Zoe's bedroom and her health insurance and her future for a stranger who'd never know what it cost me. And that was okay. I made peace with that before I even got out of the car." He looked at her. "But I wasn't just helping you. I was helping 12 people I'd never met. I was saving jobs that didn't even exist for me yet. I was changing a decision I didn't know was being made." "Yes. How is that possible? How does one moment on a sidewalk change that much?" Vanessa leaned forward. "Because that's how it works, Marcus. Every decision we make ripples outward in ways we can't predict. You didn't just save me from a car that morning. You saved me from becoming the kind of leader I swore I'd never be. You reminded me that the numbers on the spreadsheet are people, and that the easiest decision isn't always the right one." Marcus thought about Zoe, about her purple room, about the gap-toothed smile and the construction paper sign on her door. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Tell me." "That morning, when I was sitting in your lobby, waiting to find out if I still had a shot at this job, I was planning what to tell Zoe. How to explain that Daddy didn't get the job. How to make it okay. And now? Now I'm sitting in your office, 6 months later, with a job I love, a team I'm proud of, and a daughter who sleeps in a purple bedroom. And you're telling me that the reason any of it exists is because I stopped to help a woman pick up her papers." "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Marcus looked down at his hands, the same hands that had pulled Vanessa off the pavement, the same hands that had held Zoe on Rita's couch when he told her about the bedroom, the same hands that had signed his name 11 times on paperwork that changed his life. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "I know it wasn't easy. You deserve to know the whole truth. Can I ask you one more thing?" "Anything." Gerald Whitfield, the board member who voted against you. What did he say when you told him a stranger changed your mind? Vanessa smiled. The real one. The one he'd seen in the conference room 6 months ago. He said, "One stranger changed a $1.2 million decision?" And I said, "No, Gerald. One good man reminded me that some things are worth more than $1.2 million. Marcus stood up, extended his hand. Vanessa took it, and they shook. Not the formal handshake of employer and employee, but the firm grip of two people who understood something about each other that went deeper than titles or salaries or corporate hierarchy. "Go home, Marcus," Vanessa said. "Hug your daughter." "That's the second time you've told me that." "It's good advice both times." He walked to the elevator, pressed the button, caught his reflection in the polished doors. Same man, different tie, different life. Same hands. The doors opened. He stepped inside. And this time, he didn't cry. This time, he smiled. He didn't tell anyone what Vanessa had shared with him. Not Rita, not Patricia, not Devon. He carried it the way he'd carried things in the army. Quietly, internally, letting the weight of it reshape him without anyone seeing the process. But it changed how he walked through Meridian's halls. Every morning, passing Patricia's desk, seeing her coffee mug and her reading glasses, and the photos of her grandchildren pinned to her cubicle wall, he thought about how close all of that had come to being packed into a cardboard box. Every time Devon stayed late debugging a system issue, Marcus thought about a 23-year-old kid who almost got a phone call telling him his position had been eliminated before he'd even had a chance to prove himself. And Keisha. The position that hadn't existed yet. The job Marcus created because he saw talent that deserved a shot. That position had been a line item on a spreadsheet marked for deletion before Marcus ever set foot in the building. He carried it all, and he let it make him better. 7 months in, Marcus got his first real test. It started on a Wednesday morning when Devon knocked on his office door looking like he hadn't slept. "We have a problem." "Talk to me." "Someone tried to breach our network last night. Automated attack, pretty sophisticated. They didn't get in, but they got close. Closer than they should have." Marcus was on his feet before Devon finished the sentence. "Show me." They spent the next 3 hours in the server room with Keisha and 2 other team members, tracing the attack vector, patching the vulnerability, and building a forensic timeline of exactly what had happened and how close the intruder had come to accessing client data. "If they'd gotten through, we'd be looking at a data breach affecting 4,000 client records," Keisha said, pulling up the logs. "Financial data, personal information, the works." "But they didn't get through." "No, the firewall upgrade you pushed through last month caught it. The old system would have folded." Marcus looked at the logs. Keisha was right. The $45,000 firewall upgrade he'd fought for in his 3rd week, the one Sandra Liu had questioned as premature, had just prevented a breach that could have cost Meridian millions in liability and destroyed their reputation overnight. "I need to brief Vanessa," Marcus said. "Devon, keep monitoring. Keisha, I want a full vulnerability report by end of day. Everyone else, nobody leaves until we're sure the door is locked." He went upstairs and knocked on Vanessa's office door. "Come in." "We had an attempted breach last night." Vanessa's face went still. "How bad?" "They didn't get in. The new firewall stopped them. But they were good. Better than anything we've seen. If this had happened 2 months ago, before the upgrade, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." "What do you need?" "Budget for a full security audit. External penetration testing. And I want to bring in a specialist for 2 weeks to stress test everything we've built." "Cost?" "About $75,000. "Do it. No hesitation. No committee. No, Let me think about it and get back to you. Just do it. Marcus had worked for people who would have spent 2 weeks debating whether the threat was real while the threat was still active. Vanessa made the call in 4 seconds. Thank you. Marcus, the board meets Friday. Gerald is going to ask about this. He's going to use it to question the IT budget, to question the decision not to outsource. Be ready. I'll be ready. And Marcus, good catch. Your team did well. My team did everything. I just made sure they had the tools. He went back downstairs and worked straight through until 8 p.m. Rita picked up Zoe from school, fed her dinner, and put her to bed. Marcus called at 7:30 to say goodnight. Daddy, when are you coming home? Late tonight, baby. There's a problem at work I need to fix. Is it a big problem? Medium, but I want to make sure it's all the way fixed before I leave. That's because you're responsible. Where'd you learn that word? Mrs. Patterson said it at school. She said responsible means you don't leave until the job is done. Mrs. Patterson sounds smart. She's okay. She makes us do too much math. Daddy? Yeah? Tomorrow, can we have pancakes? Real ones, not the frozen kind. Real pancakes, I promise. With blueberries? With blueberries. Okay. I love you to the moon. Love you to the moon and back. Twice. He hung up and stared at the server logs for another hour. Then he went home, slept for 5 hours, and was back at his desk by 6:30 a.m. Thursday was the vulnerability report. Keisha's work was meticulous. She'd traced the attack to an overseas IP address, documented every step of the intrusion attempt, and mapped out a comprehensive remediation plan that went beyond just fixing the immediate problem. This is excellent work, Keisha. I want to present it to the leadership team. It's my job to present it. I know, but I did the work, and I want them to see who did it. I'm not trying to overstep. People need to know that the people protecting their data aren't invisible. Marcus looked at her, 26 years old, 6 months out of a hospital help desk, brilliant, driven, and tired of being overlooked. You'll present it with me, he said, side by side. I'll handle the executive summary. You walk them through the technical details. Keisha's eyes went wide. Really? You did the work. You deserve the credit. That's how this team operates. Friday morning, board meeting. Marcus put on his best tie, still not expensive, but sharp, and walked into a room full of people who controlled the financial future of the company. Vanessa was at the head of the table, Richard Gaines to her right, Sandra Liu to her left, and at the far end, arms crossed, face set in permanent skepticism, Gerald Whitfield. Gerald was everything Marcus had expected from Vanessa's description. Mid-60s, silver-haired, the kind of man who'd been successful long enough to believe his way was the only way. He looked at Marcus the way he probably looked at every expense line item, as something to be questioned and, if possible, reduced. Mr. Thompson, Gerald said before anyone else could speak. I understand there was a security incident. An attempted breach, yes. Detected and stopped by our team. Detected and stopped by a $45,000 firewall upgrade that was pushed through outside of the normal budget cycle. That's correct. And now you're requesting an additional $75,000 for external testing. Also correct. Gerald leaned forward. Let me be direct. When this department was slated for outsourcing 8 months ago, the projected cost savings were $1.2 million annually. Instead, we kept the department, expanded it by 1 headcount, and have since spent an additional $340,000 on infrastructure upgrades. That's a total cost differential of over $1.5 million. Can you justify that? Marcus felt the room's attention like a physical weight. This was the moment. Not just for him, for Patricia, Devin, Keisha, and everyone on his team. I can. Keisha Williams, our cybersecurity specialist, will walk you through the technical details of Wednesday's incident. Gerald frowned. I asked for your justification, not a technical presentation. The technical details are the justification, Mr. Whitfield. Keisha. Keisha stood. Marcus watched her hands, steady, her voice, clear. She walked the board through the attack, the response, and the consequences that would have followed if the old systems had still been in place. Without the firewall upgrade, the breach would have succeeded, Keisha said. We'd be looking at exposure of 4,000 client records, including financial data. Conservative estimates for breach notification, legal liability, regulatory fines, and reputational damage put the cost at between $3 million and $8 million. The room was quiet. The $45,000 firewall that Mr. Whitfield referenced, Keisha continued, prevented a minimum $3 million loss. That's a return of roughly 67 to 1 on a single incident. Gerald's expression didn't change, but his arms uncrossed. A small thing. Marcus noticed it. Furthermore, Marcus said, stepping in, an outsourced IT department would not have detected this attack in real time. Contract teams operate on service-level agreements with response windows of 4 to 8 hours. Our team identified quarterly is sufficient. And just like that, it was over. Gerald didn't apologize. He didn't congratulate. He didn't admit he'd been wrong about outsourcing. But he stopped fighting. And in corporate politics, silence from a critic was as close to a victory as you were likely to get. After the meeting, Vanessa caught Marcus in the hallway. That was well done. Keisha did the heavy lifting. You let her. That's leadership, Marcus. Most managers would have presented the whole thing themselves and taken the credit. Most managers haven't had someone give them a shot when they didn't have to. Vanessa tilted her head. Are you talking about me or about Keisha? Both. She smiled and walked away. Marcus went back to the 12th floor and found his team waiting, not anxiously, but expectantly. Patricia was in her usual spot. Devin was pretending to work. Keisha was sitting at her desk with her hands in her lap, trying to look calm. Well, Patricia said, budget approved, full security audit, external penetration testing, and Gerald Whitfield asked for quarterly reports, which means he's paying attention, which means he's taking us seriously. Devin pumped his fist. Keisha exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for an hour. Also, Marcus said, looking at Keisha, your presentation was better than mine. I need you to know that. It wasn't. It was. And the next time we're in front of that board, you're taking the lead. Keisha looked at him with an expression he recognized. The one Zoe had when he'd told her about the purple bedroom. Not just gratitude. Recognition. The look of someone who was being seen for the first time. Thank you, Marcus. Don't thank me. Just keep being this good. The weeks after the security incident changed the team's dynamic. There was a confidence now that hadn't been there before. Not arrogance, but the quiet assurance of people who'd been tested and hadn't folded. Devin took on more responsibility without being asked. Patricia started mentoring Keisha in database architecture, passing along 30 years of institutional knowledge like a master craftsman teaching an apprentice. The whole team moved differently. They'd been through something together, and it had forged them into something stronger. Marcus noticed, and he made sure Vanessa noticed too. Monthly reports, detailed but concise. Performance metrics that told a story of a department that wasn't just maintaining systems, but improving them. Cost savings that were ahead of schedule. Uptime numbers that were best in company history. 9 months in, then 10, then 11. Marcus had been at Meridian for almost a year when the thing he'd been dreading finally happened. It was a Tuesday evening. He was cooking dinner. Real dinner. Chicken parmesan. Zoe's favorite. When his phone rang. The number was blocked, but something told him to answer. Marcus? He knew the voice immediately.
3 years hadn't erased it. 100 years wouldn't erase it.
Denise? Zoe was in her room doing homework. Marcus stepped into the hallway and pulled the door half closed behind him. How did you get this number? Rita gave it to me. He was going to kill Rita. What do you want? I want to see Zoe. 4 words. 4 words that hit harder than any IED he'd ever been close to. No. Marcus, please. You left 3 years ago. You walked out while I was at work and you left your 3-year-old daughter in an empty apartment. She waited for you for 6 hours before I got home. 6 hours, Denise. She was sitting on the floor next to the door with her shoes on because she thought you'd gone to the store and were coming back. I know what I did. Do you? Because I'm the one who explained to a 3-year-old why Mommy wasn't coming home. I'm the one who held her every night for a year while she cried.
I'm the one who sat outside her bedroom door for months because she was afraid if she fell asleep, another person would disappear. His voice was shaking, not from anger, from the memory of it. The raw, unhealed place that he'd built walls around and tried to forget existed. I was sick, Marcus. I wasn't well. I know you weren't well. I begged you to get help. I found therapists. I found programs. I found support groups. You said you didn't need it. Then you left. I've been in treatment for 2 years. Intensive therapy. Medication that works. I'm not the same person who walked out that door. Good. I'm glad you got help. But that doesn't undo what you did to Zoe. I'm not asking you to undo anything. I'm asking for a chance. One conversation. Supervised. You can be there the whole time. I just want her to know that I didn't leave because of her. She doesn't think you left because of her. Are you sure about that? The question landed like a punch. Because no, he wasn't sure. Zoe didn't talk about Denise. Not anymore. She used to, in the first year, constantly. Where's Mommy? When is Mommy coming back? Did I do something wrong? But over time, the questions stopped. Not because she'd gotten answers, but because she'd stopped expecting them. And Marcus had told himself that silence meant healing, but maybe silence just meant she'd buried it so deep that even she couldn't find it anymore. I need to think about this. Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time. That's what you said before. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Denise said, I deserve that. I deserve worse than that. But Zoe doesn't deserve to grow up thinking her mother didn't want her. Because I did, Marcus. I do. I was just too broken to show it. He hung up without saying goodbye. Stood in the hallway with his back against the wall and his eyes closed, breathing the way he'd learned in combat. Slow, deliberate, forcing the adrenaline down before it took control. Daddy, is the chicken burning? He opened his eyes. Zoe was standing in her doorway, homework in one hand, purple crayon in the other. No, baby, I got it. Go finish your homework. Who was on the phone? Nobody important. Homework. Go. She went. He went back to the kitchen and finished cooking with hands that wouldn't quite steady. They ate dinner at the table. The real table, not a fold-out, with real chairs and real plates. And Zoe told him about her day with the breathless enthusiasm of a child who hadn't yet learned to filter. Mrs. Patterson says I'm the best reader in the class. She said I read at a 4th grade level, and I'm only in 2nd grade. She said I should be proud of myself. I'm proud of you too, Zoe. Also, a boy named Tyler said girls can't be scientists, and I told him that Marie Curie discovered radium and she won 2 Nobel Prizes, so he should be quiet. Did Tyler have a response to that? He said he didn't know who Marie Curie was, so I told him to Google it. That's my girl. She grinned, that gap-toothed grin.
the one that had gotten him through 3 years of darkness. Later, after Zoe was in bed, door open just a little bit, same as always, Marcus sat on his couch and called Rita. "You gave Denise my number." Silence. Then, "She has been calling me for months, Marcus. She's different. She's getting help." "That wasn't your decision to make." "You're right, and I'm sorry. But she's Zoe's mother." "She stopped being Zoe's mother the day she walked out." "That's not how it works, and you know it. Biology doesn't have an off switch." "Don't lecture me, Rita. You saw what she did to Zoe. You saw the nightmares. You saw me holding that little girl together with nothing but my bare hands for 3 years." "I saw all of it. Every bit of it. And I also saw Zoe stop asking about her mother. And I know you think that means she's moved on. But Marcus, kids don't move on. They just learn to stop asking for things they think they can't have." He didn't have an answer for that. Because Rita was right. The same way Rita was always right about the things he didn't want to hear. "I'm not making this decision tonight," he said. "Nobody's asking you to. Just don't make it out of anger. Make it for Zoe." "Everything I do is for Zoe." "I know, baby. I know." He didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling of his new apartment. The apartment the job had paid for. The apartment that existed because he'd pulled a stranger off a street. And he thought about Denise. Not the Denise who'd left. The Denise before that. The woman he'd married at 24, fresh out of the army, full of hope and plans. The woman who'd held his hand in the delivery room when Zoe was born, and cried harder than he did. The woman who'd started disappearing slowly, piece by piece, month by month, until one day the pieces that were left couldn't hold on anymore. Depression. That's what the therapist had said, afterward, when Marcus had finally gone to someone himself, because the rage was eating him alive. Your wife was suffering from severe clinical depression, likely compounded by postpartum onset that was never treated. Her leaving wasn't about you or Zoe. It was about a disease that told her you'd both be better off without her. He'd understood it intellectually. He'd even forgiven it, mostly, in the quiet hours when forgiveness felt possible. But understanding and forgiveness didn't erase the memory of Zoe sitting on the floor with her shoes on, waiting for a mother who was already gone. The next morning, Marcus went to work and did his job. He sat in meetings and reviewed reports and managed his team and said nothing about the earthquake that had rearranged his internal landscape overnight. Patricia noticed something was off. She had the emotional radar of a woman who'd raised 4 children and survived 30 years in corporate America. But she didn't push. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said, putting a coffee on his desk. "I didn't." "Want to talk about it?" "Not yet." "Okay, when you're ready." He wasn't ready for a week. Then he found himself in Vanessa's office on a Thursday afternoon, not entirely sure why he was there. "You look terrible," Vanessa said. "Thanks." "What's going on?" He told her, not all of it, not the ugly details, not the years of pain, but the outline. Ex-wife left, 3 years of silence. Now she wants back in. Zoe doesn't know. Vanessa listened without interrupting, which was the thing Marcus appreciated most about her. She didn't offer solutions. She didn't judge. She just listened. "What are you going to do?" she asked when he finished. "I don't know. Part of me wants to say no. Protect Zoe from another disappointment. Keep things stable. Things are good right now. Better than they've been since the divorce. Why risk that? And the other part? The other part thinks about what I said in my interview. That I want Zoe to grow up knowing that doing right matters more than getting ahead. That other people's welfare matters. Even people who've hurt us. You think letting Denise see Zoe is the right thing? I think denying a child access to a parent who's genuinely trying to get better might not be the right thing. And I think Zoe deserves to make that decision for herself. Not now, she's too young, but eventually. And eventually starts with me opening the door. That's incredibly generous.
It's not generous, it's terrifying. I've been Zoe's whole world for 3 years. I've been the one she counts on, the one who's always there. What if Denise comes back and I'm not enough anymore? What if Zoe gets a mother and realizes what she's been missing and looks at me differently?
He hadn't meant to say that. He hadn't even known he was thinking it until the words were out. But there it was, the fear underneath the anger. Not that Denise would hurt Zoe again. That Denise would love Zoe well and Marcus would become less. Marcus. Vanessa's voice was gentle. You pulled a stranger out of traffic because it was the right thing to do, even though it might cost you everything. You're the same man now as you were that morning. The same father. Whatever happens with Denise, Zoe knows who's been there. Every night, every morning, every instant oatmeal, and every bedtime story. That doesn't disappear because someone else shows up.
How do you know?
Because my father raised me alone from the time I was 9. My mother left too. Different circumstances, but the same absence. And when she came back 10 years later, wanting to reconnect, I was angry, confused, scared. But I never once forgot who'd been there. Not for a single moment. Marcus looked at her. In almost a year of working together, Vanessa had never shared anything this personal. She was the CEO. She was professional. She was his boss. But right now, she was a woman who understood exactly what he was going through, because she'd lived the other side of it. Did you forgive her? Your mother? Eventually. It took years. And it didn't look like the movies. No big reunion, no tearful hug that fixed everything. It was slow and messy, and sometimes I hated her all over again for what she'd missed. But I'm glad my father let her try, because the alternative was spending my whole life wondering. I don't want Zoe to spend her life wondering.
Then you already know what to do. Marcus sat with it for another moment. Then he stood up.
Thank you, Vanessa.
For what?
For listening. For telling me about your mother. For not telling me what to do.
You don't need anyone to tell you what to do, Marcus. You just needed someone to sit with you while you figured it out.
He walked back to his office and closed the door. Sat at his desk for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and dialed the blocked number that had called him Tuesday night. Denise answered on the second ring.
Marcus?
One meeting, supervised, at a therapist's office. Zoe's therapist, not yours. I'll be in the room the entire time. If at any point Zoe seems uncomfortable, scared, or upset, it's over immediately. And if you don't show up, or if you show up and you're not who you say you are now, it's over permanently. Those are my terms. Denise was crying. He could hear it through the phone.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you.
Don't thank me.
Show up. That's all I'm asking. Just show up and be who you say you are.
I will. I promise.
I've heard your promises before, Denise.
I know you have, but this one's different.
Prove it.
He hung up, sat in his office, looked at the nameplate on his door. Marcus Thompson, Senior IT Systems Manager, and thought about how strange it was that a nameplate could mean so much and so little at the same time. His phone buzzed. A text from Zoe, sent from Rita's phone.
Daddy, can we have tacos tonight? I have been very good today, and also I got 100 on my spelling test.
He typed back, Tacos it is. Proud of you, baby. See you tonight. Then he put his phone down, opened his laptop, and went back to work. Because the world didn't stop turning just because your heart was in pieces. And the people counting on him, his team, his daughter, himself, deserved a man who kept moving forward even when forward felt impossible. That was what Marcus Thompson did.
He kept moving forward. It was the only direction he knew.
Phần kết thúc. Lưu ý. Viết 3.500 đến 4.000 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện. Pha hội thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyển tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột. Không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ. Phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ. Giọng văn giàu cảm xúc, chân thực và gần gũi. Kể theo ngôi thứ ba. Giữ độ kịch tính, không viết lan man. Kết thúc dùng câu khẳng định mạnh để khép lại câu chuyện, rõ ràng, trọn vẹn. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn, không nhảy sang mục Document 022.06 Orchestrated Final Narrative Arc with Emotional Depth and Seamless Continuity.
The user wants me to write. Part num, the final part of the story, 3,500 to 4,000 words, seamlessly connected to previous parts, with dialogue, emotional storytelling in American style, third person, no scene descriptions, focused on action/emotion/psychology, ending with a strong, affirming statement to close the story completely. Done. Part 5. The Measure of a Man. The meeting with Denise happened on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after Marcus made the call. He'd spent those 3 weeks preparing Zoe, not with speeches or explanations, but with small, careful conversations that opened the door without pushing her through it. The first one happened over pancakes, real ones with blueberries, just like she'd asked for. "Zoe, do you ever think about your mom?" She stopped chewing, looked at him with those eyes that saw everything and forgave most of it. "Sometimes." "What do you think about?" "I don't know. What she looks like now. If she thinks about me." "She does think about you." "How do you know?" "Because she called me. She wants to see you." Zoe put her fork down. Not dramatically. She was 7, not a soap opera actress. But deliberately. The way she did when she was processing something too big for a quick answer. "Is she sick?" "What do you mean?" "Aunt Rita told me once that Mommy left because she was sick in her brain. Not like a cold, like a sadness that got too big." Marcus was going to kill Rita, and then thank her, possibly in that order. "That's right. Your mom had a kind of sickness called depression. It made it hard for her to take care of herself, and she didn't think she could take care of you the right way. So she left." "But that's not true. She could have stayed, and we could have helped her." "You're right. And that's something your mom knows now. She's been getting help, seeing doctors, taking medicine, working on getting better. And now she wants to see you. But only if you want to." "Do you want me to see her?" The question hit Marcus in a place he wasn't ready for. Because the honest answer was complicated. The honest answer was that part of him wanted to say no, lock the door, keep Zoe safe inside the world they'd built together. But the other part, the part that had pulled Vanessa off a street because it was right, not because it was easy, that part knew what the answer had to be. "I want you to have the choice, Zoe. This is your decision, not mine." "But what if she leaves again?" "Then I'll be here, same as always." "Promise?" "I'm not going anywhere. Not ever. That's the one thing you never have to worry about." Zoe picked up her fork, ate a blueberry, chewed slowly. "Okay," she said. "I'll see her." "Yeah?" "Yeah. But you have to be there the whole time." "I will be. And if I want to leave, we leave. Immediately. No questions." "And can we get ice cream after? Because I think this is going to be a lot of feelings, and ice cream helps with feelings." Marcus laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from a place right next to crying. "Yeah, baby. We can get ice cream after. The therapist's office was in a building on Elm Street, second floor. A room designed to feel like nobody's office. Soft chairs, warm lighting, a box of tissues on every surface. Dr. Amara Chen had been Zoe's therapist for 2 years, the one person outside of Marcus and Rita who understood the full landscape of what Denise's leaving had done. "Remember," Dr. Chen told Marcus in the hallway before the session, "let Zoe lead. If she wants to talk, let her talk. If she wants to be quiet, let her be quiet. Your job is to be present, not to manage the outcome." What if it goes badly? Then we deal with it. That's what we're here for.
What if she's not who she says she is? What if she's still...
Marcus, you made this decision for the right reasons. Trust yourself. He nodded, took a breath, walked into the room with Zoe's hand in his. Denise was already there, sitting in one of the soft chairs, hands folded in her lap, looking exactly the way Marcus remembered and completely different at the same time. Thinner, older, steadier. The chaos that used to live behind her eyes was gone, replaced by something that looked like hard-won clarity. She stood when they walked in. Her eyes went straight to Zoe and filled immediately. "Hi, Zoe." Zoe didn't let go of Marcus's hand. She looked at Denise the way she might look at a photograph that had suddenly come to life. Curious, cautious, trying to match the real thing with the version she'd been carrying in her memory. "Hi. You've gotten so big. The last time I saw you, you were so little." "I'm 7 now." "I know.
Happy belated everything."
Nobody laughed. It wasn't funny, but it wasn't hostile either. It was just two people standing in a room full of 3 years of absence, trying to figure out where to start. Dr. Chen guided them to chairs. Marcus sat next to Zoe. Denise sat across from them. The distance between the chairs was maybe 6 feet, but it felt like an ocean. "Zoe," Dr. Chen said gently, "is there anything you want to say to your mom?" Zoe was quiet for a long time. Marcus could feel her hand tightening around his. Then she looked at Denise with an expression that no 7-year-old should have to wear. The expression of someone who's been rehearsing a question for years without knowing they'd ever get to ask it. "Why did you leave?" Denise's composure cracked. Not dramatically. She didn't fall apart, didn't dissolve into hysterics. But the tears came, and she let them, and she answered her daughter honestly.
"Because I was very sick, and I thought you and your daddy would be better without me.
I was wrong. It was the worst decision I ever made in my life, and I've spent every day since then trying to become someone who deserves to sit in this room and tell you that." "Were you sad?" "Very sad. So sad that I couldn't see straight. So sad that I forgot how to be a mom." "Daddy was sad too. He cried sometimes when he thought I was asleep. I heard him." Marcus closed his eyes. He hadn't known she'd heard. 3 years of believing he'd kept it together, that he'd cried only when she was sleeping, that she'd never known the weight he was carrying. And she'd known the whole time. "I'm sorry, Marcus," Denise said, looking at him. "I'm sorry for what I put you through." "This isn't about me. This is about Zoe." "It's about all of us. What I did hurt all of us." Zoe looked back and forth between them. "Are you going to fight?" "No, baby," Marcus said. "Nobody's fighting." "Because I don't want fighting. I just want to know if she's going to stay this time." The room went silent. Dr. Chen didn't intervene. This was Zoe's moment, and everyone in the room knew it. Denise leaned forward. "Zoe, I can't promise I'll never make mistakes again, but I can promise that I will never disappear again. I will always answer your calls. I will always show up when I say I'm going to show up. And if I ever feel that sadness coming back, I'll tell you and your daddy and my doctors, and we'll handle it together. No more running. Do you pinky promise?" Denise held out her hand. Zoe looked at it. Then she looked at Marcus. "Daddy?" "Your choice, baby." Zoe reached across the 6-foot ocean and wrapped her pinky around her mother's. Marcus watched it happen and felt something release inside his chest. Not all of the weight, not even most of it, but enough to breathe a little deeper than he had in 3 years. They talked for 45 minutes. Zoe told Denise about her purple room, and Mrs. Patterson, and the spelling test, and Tyler, who didn't know about Marie Curie. Denise listened with the desperate attention of a woman trying to memorize every word. Marcus sat beside his daughter and said very little, because this wasn't his conversation to lead. It was Zoe's, and Zoe was leading it with a grace that humbled him. When it was over, Zoe stood up and looked at Denise one more time. "Can I hug you?" Denise couldn't speak. She just opened her arms, and Zoe crossed the ocean in 2 steps and hugged her mother for the first time in 3 years. It was brief, 5 seconds, maybe 6, but Marcus knew he'd remember those seconds for the rest of his life. They got ice cream afterward, 2 scoops for Zoe, chocolate and strawberry, and 1 for Marcus, who didn't taste a single bite because his mind was somewhere else entirely. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "She smells different than I remember." "People change, baby." "I know, but some things should stay the same." She licked her ice cream thoughtfully. "You always smell the same, like soap and coffee." "Is that a good thing?" "It's the best thing." They drove home with the windows down, the way they always did, and Zoe fell asleep in the back seat before they reached the apartment. Marcus carried her upstairs, tucked her into her purple bed, and stood in her doorway the way he'd done 1,000 times, watching her sleep, making sure she was real, making sure this life was real. His phone buzzed. A text from Denise. "Thank you. I don't deserve this chance, but I swear I won't waste it." He typed back, "Don't tell me. Show Zoe." Then he put his phone away and sat on his couch in the dark, in the apartment that a sprained ankle and a split-second decision had made possible. And he let himself feel the full weight of everything. The fear, the hope, the exhaustion, the gratitude. All of it pressing down on him at once. He didn't cry. He'd done enough of that. Instead, he sat in the dark and breathed. And when the breathing started to steady, he knew he was going to be okay. Not perfect, not easy, but okay. The annual company meeting was 2 weeks later. Marcus almost didn't go. Not because he didn't want to. He loved these events. The rare chance to see the whole company in one room, to feel the collective pulse of something he'd helped build. But the last month had drained him. Between the Denise situation, a second attempted breach that Keisha caught even faster than the first, and a department expansion that had him interviewing candidates 3 days a week, he was running on caffeine and willpower. "You're going," Patricia said on Monday morning, placing his coffee on his desk with the authority of a woman who'd stopped asking permission decades ago. "You've missed 2 team lunches and a birthday cake. People are starting to think you're too important for us." "I've been busy." Busy is a choice. Show up. Your team needs to see you. "Since when do you give me orders?" "Since always. You just weren't paying attention." He went. The meeting was held in the main conference hall on the ground floor. Every employee, every department, all 342 people who made Meridian run. Vanessa stood at the front, and Marcus took a seat near the back, next to Devin and Keisha. Vanessa opened with the numbers. Revenue up 12% year over year. Client retention at 94%. Employee satisfaction scores at an all-time high. She talked about the challenges, the tight quarters, the security threats, the competitive landscape. And she talked about how they'd met those challenges. Not with layoffs, not with outsourcing, with better people doing better work. Which brings me to something personal, Vanessa said, and the room shifted. She didn't do personal at company meetings. Everyone noticed. 1 year ago, I was walking to a board meeting when I fell in the street, twisted my ankle, scattered my papers everywhere, and nearly got hit by a car. A man I'd never met pulled me to safety, gathered my papers, drove me to this building, and made sure I was taken care of. Then he went upstairs to the interview he was now late for, an interview at this company. Marcus felt 300 pairs of eyes start searching the room. That man is Marcus Thompson, our senior IT systems manager. Devin nudged him. Keisha was grinning. Patricia, 3 rows up, turned around and gave him a look that said, "I told you to show up." Marcus was late to his interview because he chose a stranger's safety over his own opportunity. And when I asked him if he regretted that choice, he said something I haven't been able to forget. He said, "I want my daughter to grow up knowing that doing right matters more than getting ahead." The room was quiet. 342 people listening. What Marcus didn't know, what nobody in this room knew until now, is that the meeting I was walking to that morning was a board meeting where I planned to approve the outsourcing of our entire IT department. 12 jobs. Gone. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus saw Patricia's back stiffen. Devin's mouth fell open. Keisha grabbed the armrest of her chair. Marcus's act of kindness didn't just change his life, it changed mine. It reminded me who I built this company to be. We don't cut people to pad profits. We don't discard the team that protects us to save a line item on a spreadsheet. We find better ways. Because this company isn't just a business, it's a promise. A promise that integrity and success can coexist. She paused, found Marcus in the back row. "Marcus, would you stand up?" He didn't want to. Every instinct told him to stay seated, to deflect, to let the moment pass. But 342 people were watching, and Patricia was giving him the look. And Zoe wasn't here, but he could feel her watching anyway, the way she always watched, filing everything away. He stood. In the past year, Marcus has rebuilt our IT infrastructure, prevented 2 major security breaches, mentored junior staff, and led a team that has exceeded every performance metric we set. He's done it while being a single father, while carrying burdens most of us can't imagine, and while never once forgetting that the people he works with are human beings first and employees second. She was looking straight at him now. But more than any of that, Marcus reminded me why this company exists. Not to maximize shareholder value at the expense of human decency, not to choose the easy path when the hard path is right, but to prove every single day that how we treat each other matters more than what we earn. The applause started somewhere in the middle of the room and spread outward like a wave. Not polite applause, not the kind you give because someone's looking, the real kind, the kind that comes from people who mean it. Marcus stood there and let it wash over him. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just stood there with his hands at his sides and let himself feel it. The weight of 342 people telling him, all at once, that he mattered. Devin was clapping so hard his hands were red. Keisha was crying and pretending she wasn't. Patricia was standing, her Y2K coffee mug in one hand, clapping with the other, tears streaming down a face that Marcus had never seen cry in 12 months of working together. "Thank you, Marcus," Vanessa said, "for the reminder, and for everything you've contributed. This company is better because you're in it." He sat down. Devon slapped him on the back. Keisha leaned over and whispered, "You saved my job before I even had it."
"You saved it yourself," Marcus whispered back. "Every day."
After the meeting, people found him, not to congratulate him, though they did that too, to share. Tom Brennan, the sales director whose wife had been in the car accident, shook his hand and said, "You stayed late 3 nights to help my team with the data migration while I was at the hospital. I never thanked you for that." A woman from accounting named Grace told him that he'd spent an hour helping her recover files she'd accidentally deleted, and that she'd been too embarrassed to ask anyone else. "You didn't make me feel stupid," she said. "You just fixed it and told me it happens to everyone." A young man from the warehouse named James said Marcus had written him a recommendation for a night school program, and that he'd been accepted. "You didn't have to do that. I'm not even in your department." Marcus listened to all of it and felt something he hadn't expected. Not pride, but belonging. The sense that he'd been woven into something larger than himself, that the threads of his choices had connected to other threads in ways he couldn't have predicted. He drove home that evening the long way, taking the route that passed the intersection where he'd pulled Vanessa out of the street a year ago. He slowed down, but didn't stop. There was nothing to see, just a curb, a patch of pavement, a stretch of road that looked exactly like every other stretch of road in the city. But it wasn't. Not to him. He picked up Zoe from after-school care. She climbed into the back seat with her backpack and a painting she'd made in art class, a purple house with 2 stick figures out front, one tall and one small, holding hands under a yellow sun. "That's us," she said, holding it up. "I can see that. It's beautiful." "Mrs. Patterson said we had to paint our favorite place. I painted home." Marcus looked at the painting in the rearview mirror. The purple house, the yellow sun, the 2 figures, one tall and one small, connected at the hands.
"Daddy, you're doing the thing again."
"What thing?"
"The smiling thing, where you smile, but your eyes are wet."
"I'm just happy, baby."
"You're always happy now. You used to be tired. Now you're happy."
"Things are different now."
"Because of your job?"
"Because of a lot of things. Because of choices."
"What kind of choices?"
He thought about it. How to explain to a 7-year-old the chain of events that had brought them here, from a studio apartment to a purple bedroom, from instant oatmeal to blueberry pancakes, from a man who cried alone in elevators to a man who stood up in a room of 300 people and let himself be seen. "Do you remember when I told you about the lady who fell in the street, the morning of my interview?"
"The lady who turned out to be your boss?"
"Yeah. That morning I had to make a choice. Help her and be late for the interview, or keep driving and get there on time. I chose to help. Because that's the right thing. Because that's the right thing. And it was scary, because I didn't know what would happen. I thought I might lose the job. I thought I might lose our chance at a better life. But you didn't. But I didn't. And here's what I've learned, Zoe. The right choice doesn't always lead to the easy outcome. Sometimes it costs you. Sometimes it hurts. But it's still the right choice. And if you keep making it, over and over, even when it's hard, it builds something. Something you can stand on. Something that holds you up when everything else is shaking. Like a foundation? Exactly like a foundation. Where'd you learn that word? We're doing a unit on buildings in science. Of course you are. They pulled into the apartment complex. Zoe unbuckled herself. She'd mastered the seatbelt 3 months ago and was fiercely proud of it, and grabbed her backpack and her painting.
"Daddy?" "Yeah?" I'm glad you stopped for that lady.
Me too, baby.
And I'm glad you let me see Mommy.
He hadn't expected that. Not here, not now, not in the parking lot of their apartment complex on a random Tuesday evening. But Zoe had always had a way of saying the biggest things in the smallest moments.
Are you okay with everything that's happening with her?
I think so. She's sad a lot, but she's trying. I can tell she's trying.
How can you tell?
Because she listens when I talk. Really listens. Like you do. Marcus reached back and squeezed her hand. You're the wisest person I know, Zoe Thompson.
I know. Also, can we have tacos tonight?
We had tacos 3 days ago.
And they were amazing, so let's have them again.
Tacos it is. They walked upstairs together. Zoe ran ahead, as she always did, taking the stairs 2 at a time with the energy of someone who hadn't yet learned that the world would try to slow her down.
Marcus followed, carrying her backpack, watching her climb, thinking about all the stairs he'd climbed to get here.
Inside, Zoe taped her painting to the refrigerator, next to the construction paper sign from moving day. Zoe's room, in purple crayon, now wrinkled and faded, but still holding its place. She arranged the 2 pieces side by side, stepped back, and nodded with satisfaction.
Perfect.
Perfect, Marcus agreed. He made tacos. She did homework at the kitchen table, narrating her math problems out loud with the running commentary of a sportscaster. He corrected her when she was wrong and praised her when she was right, and they moved through the evening the way they always did. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but together. At bedtime, Zoe climbed under her purple covers and pulled her stuffed elephant close. Door open? Marcus asked.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. He leaned down and kissed her forehead.
She grabbed his collar the way she did when she had one more thing to say. Daddy, do you think you're a good person?
The question surprised him. I try to be. Why?
Because I think you are. The best person. And not just because you're my daddy. Because of the things you do. The way you help people. The way you never leave.
Zoe,
I'm serious. Mrs. Patterson asked us who our hero is. Tyler said Batman. Madison said Taylor Swift. I said you.
You said me?
I said my daddy is my hero because he saves people, and he always does the right thing, even when it's hard. And Mrs. Patterson said that's the best kind of hero there is.
Marcus couldn't speak. Not because he didn't have words, but because the words he had were too big for his throat. He kissed her forehead one more time, smoothed her hair, and stood up. Good night, baby. I love you to the moon.
Love you to the moon and back. Twice.
He walked to the doorway, left it open just a little bit, the way she liked. Stood there for a moment, the way he always did, watching her close her eyes and settle into the kind of sleep that only comes when you feel safe. Then he walked to the kitchen, sat down at the table, and looked at the painting on the refrigerator. The purple house, the yellow sun, the 2 stick figures holding hands. 1 year ago, Marcus Thompson had $387 in his checking account, a car with bad brakes, and a daughter eating instant oatmeal in a studio apartment. He'd been a man running out of options, driving to an interview that felt like his last chance, carrying the weight of 3 years of single fatherhood on shoulders that were starting to buckle. And then a woman fell in the street. He didn't think about it. He didn't calculate the cost. He didn't weigh his options or consider the consequences, or ask himself what he stood to gain. He just moved. Because someone needed help, and he was there, and that was enough. One moment, one choice, one act of doing right when doing wrong would have been easier. It saved a woman's life. It saved 12 jobs. It saved a CEO from a decision she would have regretted. It gave a 7-year-old girl a purple bedroom and a father she could be proud of. It built a team. It changed a company. It opened a door that led to a man standing up in a room of 300 people and being told, by all of them, that he mattered. None of it was guaranteed. None of it was owed. The universe doesn't keep score, and the right choice doesn't come with a receipt. But Marcus Thompson made it anyway, not because he knew what would happen, because he knew who he was. And that was enough. That was always enough.